Jason Cole had worked as a private investigator for years, but never had a case quite like this. The job offer came unexpectedly, through an encrypted message on his outdated console. The offer was simple. Find a missing alien woman, Alara, and return her to her husband. The pay was a fortune, enough to make Jason think twice. He didn't care much for the wealthy clients who hired him. His job was to get results, not to judge. But something about this case stood out. The billionaire client, a tall, silver-skinned alien named Kyle, had made it clear that he wanted his wife back, no questions asked. Jason had seen wealthy clients demand their possessions back before, but this was different. Kyle's wife had been gone for weeks, and the man was desperate. Jason studied the message from Kyle. Alara has been missing. Your assignment: find her. Bring her back. Details of her last known whereabouts are attached. He sighed, staring at the empty office. A dark corner of his mind whispered that this case was going to be far more complicated than the usual missing person job. But the money, he couldn't ignore it. So Jason packed his bags and booked a transport to the planet where Alara had last been seen. The trip to the alien world was uneventful. Jason found himself on a bustling spaceport in the capital city, a place where humans and aliens of every shape and size walked side by side. Bright neon lights bathed the streets in hues of purple and blue. The sky was a mix of pink and violet as alien ships flew overhead, casting long shadows on the ground. Jason didn't mind the chaos. He had learned to navigate through the noise of strange worlds, and this one was no different. What caught his attention was a picture of Alara he had been sent. She was stunning, with long, flowing dark hair, sharp violet eyes, and skin that shimmered like marble. She looked more like a queen than a missing person. His task was simple enough. Kyle had given him the last known location, a private estate on the outskirts of the city. It was an old mansion, isolated from the rest of the city, a place where Alara had lived before her disappearance. Jason hoped to find answers there. He didn't know what he expected to find, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something about this case wasn't adding up. The estate was everything Kale had promised, luxurious and massive, hidden behind high walls with gates that looked more like an entrance to a fortress than a private home. As Jason approached the gates, a tall guard stepped forward. "Name?" the guard asked in a gruff voice. "Jason Cole. I'm here about the missing person case. Alara." The guard didn't move. "State your business." "I'm hired to find her," Jason said, pulling out a datapad with the details Kale had given him. He handed it over. The guard scanned it, then nodded slowly, stepping aside. The estate was eerily quiet. There was no sign of anyone. As Jason walked through the marble corridors, he noticed the fine details: expensive artwork, lavish furniture, and strange decorations from all over the galaxy. It was clear Alara had lived here in comfort, but there was something unsettling about it. It felt more like a cage than a home. Jason moved carefully, examining every room. Alara's personal items were scattered across the house: books, paintings, and artifacts from alien cultures. But there was no sign of her. He found a room filled with holoscreens and computers, some still running, others powered off. He sifted through the information on one of the devices and found a set of encrypted messages from an unknown sender. They seemed to be from Alara, though Jason couldn't tell if they were recent or if they had been sent before she disappeared. "Where did you go?" Jason muttered to himself as he tapped through the messages, unable to make sense of them. They were in an alien language, full of cryptic symbols. It was clear Alara had been involved in something much bigger than just running away from her husband. Jason sat back in the chair, feeling a sense of unease wash over him. He had expected this job to be straightforward, but the deeper he delved, the more questions arose. Why would a woman like Alara, so beautiful, so powerful, run away from a life of luxury? And why did Kale want her back so badly? He looked out the large windows of the estate, staring at the city skyline. The longer he stayed in this mansion, the more he realized he was starting to feel a strange pull toward Alara. There was something about her. He couldn't quite place it, but he knew that he had to find her. There was more at play here than just a missing person. Later that evening, as Jason continued to search the estate, he found something that stopped him dead in his tracks, a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside, he found a series of documents that detailed Cale's personal business dealings, including his involvement in dangerous negotiations with rival alien factions. But the most surprising discovery was a file labeled Alara's Escape Plan. Jason's heart raced as he opened it. It contained detailed maps of the galaxy, including coordinates for remote planets, as well as information on people who could help Alara disappear. There was also a cryptic note that simply said, "He won't stop until he has me back." Jason's mind raced. Was Alara trying to escape something far more sinister than a controlling husband? Could this have been more than just a runaway wife? Was she in danger, or had she escaped willingly? Just then, Jason heard footsteps. He quickly hid the documents in his coat pocket and turned to face the door. Standing in the doorway was a woman. She was tall, with striking features that matched the woman in the hollow he had seen, Alara. Her hair was dark and flowing, her eyes sharp and bright. She didn't seem surprised to see him, but her expression was guarded. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice calm but filled with authority. Jason stood up, his heart pounding. I was hired to find you. By your husband, Kyle." Alara's eyes narrowed. "I'm sure he sent you for a reason, but I'm not going back to him, not ever." Jason's breath caught in his throat. He had expected someone broken, someone desperate to return. Instead, he found a woman who seemed more powerful than he had anticipated. Jason's heart raced as Alara stood in front of him. Her beauty was undeniable, but there was something more to her presence, something fierce, something unyielding. Her eyes scanned him, taking in every detail, yet there was no fear in her gaze. "I didn't expect company," Alara said, her voice calm but carrying an underlying tension. Jason took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He had prepared for a confrontation, but this was different. The woman in front of him was not the helpless, frightened wife of an alien billionaire that he had imagined. She was composed, collected, and exuded a kind of quiet power that made Jason take a step back. "I'm not here to hurt you," Jason said, his voice more reassuring than he intended. "I'm just trying to understand what's going on. Your husband, Kale, he's worried about you." Alara's expression didn't change. Worried or possessive? Jason winced at the bitterness in her tone. He hadn't expected such a strong reaction. He cleared his throat, trying to stay professional. "I'm just doing my job. I was hired to find you and bring you back. If you don't want to go back to him, I won't force you." She studied him for a moment, her violet eyes intense and calculating. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than before. "Why are you really here? Kyle's money doesn't mean anything to you, does it?" Jason didn't answer right away. It was true. He was well paid for jobs like this, but the money was never the real motivator. He had seen his fair share of wealthy clients, but none like Kale, none with such an air of danger. And now, standing before Alara, Jason found himself questioning everything. "I was hired to find you," he said finally, his voice firm. "But that's not all. I need answers." Alara laughed softly, a sound that was almost melancholy. "You're not the first one to ask. Everyone wants answers, but they never want to listen to the truth." Jason's curiosity was piqued. "What truth?" She sighed and motioned for him to sit. "Come inside. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm sure you have more questions than I can answer in a hallway." Jason followed her into a cozy sitting room, the walls lined with ancient-looking books and strange artifacts. The furniture was comfortable but not extravagant, a sharp contrast to the rest of the mansion. It felt like Alara had put effort into making this place her own, a small haven away from the grandiosity of Kale's world. Alara took a seat across from Jason, her eyes still fixed on him. "I'm not running from Kale because of some petty quarrel. I'm running because I've had enough. Enough of the control, enough of the manipulation. He thought he could buy me, but I'm not his possession. No one owns me. Jason absorbed her words. There was so much pain in her voice, but also so much strength. He had imagined she was just a victim, but now he saw her as a woman who had made a choice. She wasn't the one who needed rescuing. It was Kale who had lost control of the situation. "You're saying that you don't want to be found?" Jason asked, his voice softening. Alara's expression was unreadable. "I didn't want to be found, no. But I also know that Kale will never stop searching for me. I've had to hide for weeks, leaving behind everything I knew. My home, my family, my life. It's the only way to stay free." Jason felt a pang of sympathy for her. He had expected her to be running from fear, but it was clear that she was running to protect herself. She wasn't hiding because she was weak. She was hiding because her freedom meant more than anything else. "I can help you," Jason said, his voice sincere. "But I need to understand what's really going on. What is Kale after? Why does he want you back so badly?" Alara's gaze darkened. "Kyle doesn't care about me, Jason. He cares about power. He controls an empire, and I was just a piece of that empire. I was his queen, but only in name. He never saw me as a partner, only as a tool. He thinks that by getting me back, he'll regain control of everything I've taken away from him." Jason leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you mean, taken away?" "I wasn't always like this," Alara said, her eyes distant, as if recalling a painful memory. "When I met Kale, I was just a young woman from a distant planet. I had no idea who he was, what he was capable of. He swept me off my feet with his charm, his wealth, his power. I thought it was love." Her voice wavered slightly, but she regained her composure. "But as time passed, I realized that I was nothing more than a prize. He treated me like an accessory to his wealth, a piece of property to show off. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I left." Jason remained silent, unsure of what to say. He had always believed that the powerful were invincible, untouchable, but Alara's story was a stark reminder that even those who seemed to have everything could be trapped by their own circumstances. Alara's eyes met his, her expression softening for the first time. "Kale is dangerous, Jason. He'll stop at nothing to get me back, and if you're involved in this, he will come after you too. You don't understand what he's capable of. He's not just a wealthy businessman. He has connections, powerful allies across the galaxy. People will do anything for him." Jason swallowed hard. He had expected danger, but not this level of threat. He had assumed he was just tracking down a missing person, but this was more like a war, a battle for control, for freedom, and for power. "I didn't sign up for this," Jason said, his voice shaky. "You're already in it," Alara replied, her voice unwavering. "Whether you like it or not, you're part of this now." Jason stood up and paced across the room, trying to process everything he had just heard. He had been hired to find a woman, but now he had uncovered something much bigger. This wasn't just a missing person case. It was a fight for control of an empire. And Alara was at the center of it all. Alara stood as well, moving closer to him. "I can't go back, Jason, I won't. But I need your help. You're the only one who can stop him. If Kale finds me, he'll never let me go. If you care about me, even just a little, you'll help me destroy everything he's built." Jason's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. He had been hired to bring her back, but now he found himself questioning everything. What had started as a simple investigation had turned into something far more complicated. His heart was telling him one thing, but his logic was saying something else. But deep down, Jason knew one thing for sure. There was no turning back now. The days following his conversation with Alara were the most confusing of Jason's life. He had been hired to find a missing person, yet what he had uncovered was far more than a simple disappearance. Alara wasn't just running from her husband, she was escaping an empire. And Jason was now tangled in the web of her world. They moved quickly, making plans to stay one step ahead of Kale's bounty hunters. Jason's instincts told him to stay distant, to keep his emotions under control, but that was becoming harder with each passing day. Alara wasn't just a mission anymore. She had become something else, something he couldn't ignore. Her strength, her pain, and her beauty all drew him in. They had found a small remote planet to hide on. The place was quiet, isolated from the bustle of the galaxy. Jason felt safer here, but every glance he exchanged with Alara reminded him that things were far from normal. One evening, as they sat on the small porch of the cottage they had rented, Alara spoke in a quiet voice, her eyes far away. "I never wanted to be in this position," she said, her tone soft yet heavy with emotion. "I never asked for any of this. Kyle's power, his wealth, he used it all to control me. I wasn't his partner. I was just another part of his collection." Jason nodded, his heart heavy with sympathy. He couldn't imagine what it must have been like for her, to be trapped in a world where her value was defined by her marriage. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice sincere. "No one should have to go through that." Alara turned her gaze to him, her violet eyes searching his face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was something in the air between them, something unspoken. Jason could feel it, a tension that had been building ever since they first met. The pull was undeniable, but he fought it. She was his assignment, his responsibility, and nothing more. But Alara was different. She was strong, smart, and undeniably captivating. He had never met anyone like her, and in that moment, as they sat together, he couldn't help but wonder what life could be like if things were different. If she weren't running from an alien empire, and if they weren't both caught in this dangerous game. Alara reached out, touching his arm gently. "Thank you," she whispered, "for helping me, for believing in me." The warmth of her touch sent a shock through Jason. He looked into her eyes and saw something that he hadn't seen before, something that made his heart race. It wasn't just gratitude in her gaze. There was something more, something deeper. For a moment, Jason allowed himself to imagine what it might be like to be with her, to share a life together, free from Kale's control. But then reality hit him like a cold wave. He was a human, a hired investigator, and she was the wife of a powerful alien billionaire. There was no future for them. But as the night grew darker, Jason's resolve started to crumble. He had been around powerful people all his life. He had seen their manipulations and their games, but Alara wasn't like the others. She was different. And for the first time in his life, Jason realized that he didn't want to walk away from her. Without thinking, he leaned closer. Alara didn't pull away. Instead, she moved toward him, closing the space between them. Their lips met, and the world seemed to fall away. For a brief moment, there was nothing but the two of them. No mission, no danger, no past. Jason's heart pounded in his chest, his hands finding their way to her shoulders, pulling her closer. Alara responded with equal intensity, her fingers brushing through his hair as their kiss deepened. It wasn't just a kiss, it was a promise that they would face whatever came next together, even if it meant defying everything they knew. When they finally pulled away, Jason was breathless. Alara looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and longing. "I didn't expect that," she said softly, her voice trembling. Jason could hardly find the words. His mind was a whirlwind, his emotions in chaos. He had never allowed himself to feel so vulnerable before. But with Alara, everything was different. She had become more than just the woman he had been hired to find. She had become someone he cared about, someone he wanted to protect. "I didn't either," he admitted, his voice low. "But I couldn't stay away." Alara's gaze softened. "You shouldn't be here, Jason. This is dangerous. If Kale finds out—" "I know," Jason interrupted, "but I can't just walk away. I've already made my choice." Her eyes searched his face, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. Then slowly she nodded. "I've made my choice too," she whispered. They sat in silence, the weight of their decision settling over them. Jason knew that their future was uncertain. The danger was far from over, and Kale would never stop hunting them. But for the first time since he had been hired for this job, Jason felt like he had a purpose. He wasn't just a hired hand anymore. He was in this for her, for Alara. As the days passed, their bond deepened. They worked together to stay one step ahead of Kale's forces. They moved quickly and carefully, always looking over their shoulders. But even as the danger grew, their feelings for each other couldn't be denied. Jason knew that he had crossed a line. He had broken the rules, and there was no going back. But the more time he spent with Alara, the more he realized that he had made the right choice. She wasn't just the missing wife of a powerful alien. She was a woman who had taken control of her own fate. And that was something Jason respected more than anything else. But with each passing day, the danger grew. Kale's bounty hunters were closing in, and Jason knew that it was only a matter of time before they would have to face him. When that day came, Jason wasn't sure what would happen, but he was ready to stand by Alara's side, no matter the cost. The quiet days on the remote planet were growing fewer. The peaceful moments Jason shared with Alara were fleeting, and the tension in the air was becoming impossible to ignore. They had evaded Kale's bounty hunters for weeks, but Jason knew they couldn't run forever. The power of Kale's empire was vast, and the alien billionaire had resources that could track them down anywhere in the galaxy. Jason had always been careful, calculating, methodical, but in Alara's presence, he found it hard to focus on anything other than her. Every glance, every touch seemed to remind him of the impossible situation they were in. They were not just fugitives. They were two people caught in a deadly game between love and survival. One night, as they sat in their small cottage, Jason finally broke the silence. "We can't keep running, Alara. Sooner or later, Kale will find us." Alara's expression was grim. She had known the truth for a long time, but hearing Jason say it out loud made it feel all the more real. "I know," she said softly. "But what choice do we have? If we go back, Kale will never stop. He'll keep me locked away in his palace under his control. I can't live like that again." Jason nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just a woman fleeing from a possessive husband. There was something deeper at play, something he hadn't fully understood until now. "Alara," he began carefully, "what exactly is Kale after? Why does he want you back so badly?" Her eyes darkened and she looked away, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her cup. Jason could see that she was holding back. There was more she wasn't telling him. He could feel it in his gut. "Alara," Jason pressed, "I need to know." She sighed, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the truth was pressing down on her. "Kale isn't just a businessman, Jason. He's involved in things that go far beyond wealth. He controls more than just his empire. He has connections in every corner of the galaxy, people who owe him favors, planets that bend to his will. But there's something even more dangerous, something that he's been planning for years." Jason leaned forward, his heart beating faster. "What do you mean?" Alara paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "Kale isn't just after power. He wants to build an army, a force that no one can stand against. And to do that, he needs me. He needs my bloodline." Jason furrowed his brow in confusion. "Your bloodline?" Alara met his gaze, her eyes filled with a sadness that made Jason's stomach twist. "I come from a long line of powerful beings. My family has been at the center of galactic politics for centuries. My bloodline is special. It holds the key to unlocking Kale's plans." Jason's mind raced. He had known that Alara was special, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. "What are you saying?" he asked quietly. Alara's voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm not just a woman, Jason, I'm a weapon. Kale knew that the moment he met me. He married me not for love, but for my ability to help him secure his control over the galaxy. He believed that by having me, he could create an army of beings like me, with abilities that no one could match." Jason's mind spun with the enormity of what she was saying. Alara was more than just the wife of a billionaire. She was part of something much larger, something that could reshape the power structures of the entire galaxy. "But why didn't you tell me this before?" Jason asked, frustration creeping into his voice. "Why keep this hidden?" Alara's face was a mix of regret and pain. Because I was scared, Jason. Scared of what Cale would do if he found out I was trying to escape. Scared of what he would do to you if he knew you were involved. Jason felt his chest tighten. He had known. The situation was dangerous, but this was something he hadn't been prepared for. So what happens now? What are we supposed to do? Alara stood up, her expression resolute. We have to stop him. If we don't, Kyle will continue to build his army, and no one will be able to stop him. He'll use my bloodline to create a force that could conquer worlds, and I can't let that happen. I won't let it. Jason stood up as well, his hands clenched at his sides. But how? How can we stop someone like him? He has everything. Money, power, and army at his command. What do we have? Alara turned to face him, her eyes burning with determination. We have each other, and we have the truth. Cale's plan is bigger than he thinks. If we can expose what he's doing, if we can get the galaxy to see him for what he really is, then we might have a chance to bring him down. Jason's mind was racing as the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. This wasn't just about Alara's freedom anymore. This was about saving the galaxy from the grasp of a power-hungry alien who would stop at nothing to control it. We can't do this alone, Jason said, his voice filled with resolve. We need help. We need to find others who are willing to stand against him. Alara nodded. I know. But Cale's reach is vast. He has spies everywhere. Anyone who stands against him is a target. We'll have to be careful. Jason walked over to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. We'll be careful and we'll be smart. Together. Alara's eyes softened, but there was a look of uncertainty in them. And if Cale finds out what we're doing? Jason's jaw tightened. Then we fight. We fight with everything we have. Alara met his gaze, her eyes filled with trust. You're right. We fight. We have no other choice. Jason knew that what they were about to do would be the most dangerous thing he had ever attempted. The stakes had never been higher. But standing beside Alara, he realized that he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of the unknown, of Cale, or of the chaos that was sure to come. What scared him now was the thought of losing her. He had crossed a line when he had let himself fall for her, but there was no going back. He wasn't just a hired investigator anymore. He was her partner, and he would fight to protect her and stop Cale, no matter the cost. Jason stood in the shadows, watching the towering palace of Cale from a distance. The plan had been set in motion. He and Alara had gathered all the information they could, Cale's hidden dealings, his connections, and the truth about his dangerous plans to build an army that could conquer entire planets. Now it was time to put everything on the line. They had to expose Cale for what he really was before it was too late. The galaxy had to know the truth. Alara stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the palace ahead. Her expression was a mix of determination and fear, but Jason could see the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had sparked when she first revealed her past to him. She wasn't the same woman who had been swept away by Cale's power and promises of luxury. She was a warrior now, ready to fight for her freedom and the freedom of countless others. We do this tonight, Jason said quietly. No turning back. Alara nodded, her jaw set. We expose Kyle, and we make sure he can't hurt anyone else. We can't wait any longer. He's getting closer. Jason felt the weight of her words. They had been running for weeks, hiding in the shadows, but now they were about to make their stand. The final confrontation with Cale was inevitable. Cale's empire stretched far and wide, but Jason knew that if anyone had the strength to bring it down, it was Alara. She wasn't just a woman caught in a marriage of convenience anymore. She was a symbol of resistance, and Jason had chosen to stand beside her. The night sky was dark, and the stars above seemed to blink with anticipation. They made their way through the alleys of the city, careful to stay out of sight. They had spent the past few days gathering information from anyone willing to help them. Former allies of Alara, disgruntled members of Kyle's inner circle, even some of the rebels who had fought against Cale's rise to power. Now they had a plan. It wasn't just about taking Cale down. It was about destroying everything he had built, exposing him for the tyrant he truly was. When they reached the entrance to the palace, They paused. The massive gates loomed in front of them, guarded by soldiers and surveillance systems. But Jason wasn't worried. He had come prepared. Using the data they had gathered, he had hacked into the security systems, bypassing the cameras and disabling the alarms. He and Alara slipped inside without a sound, moving like shadows through the corridors. The palace was a fortress. Its grand halls were decorated with alien art and technology from across the galaxy, symbols of Kale's wealth and influence. But behind the opulence, Jason could feel the tension, the presence of something darker, something more oppressive. Alara's voice broke the silence. "We're close. His private chambers are just ahead." Jason nodded, his heart racing. He had imagined this moment for days, but now that they were here, the reality was even more intense than he had expected. Kale was ruthless, a man who would stop at nothing to maintain his control. The thought of confronting him made Jason uneasy, but he pushed those feelings aside. Alara had shown him what real strength was, and he wouldn't back down now. They reached a set of heavy doors guarded by two of Kyle's personal guards. Jason and Alara exchanged a quick glance before silently taking their positions. In an instant, Jason moved, knocking the guards out with precise, calculated moves. They were down before they even knew what hit them. Jason had trained for moments like this, when everything depended on his ability to act quickly and decisively. But this wasn't just about getting inside Kale's chambers. This was about protecting Alara, stopping Kale, and ensuring that the galaxy didn't fall under its control. The doors to Kale's chambers swung open and they entered. Kale stood by a massive window staring out at the city below. He turned slowly when he heard them enter, his expression cold and unreadable. He was tall, his silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. His eyes locked onto Alara with an intensity that made Jason's blood run cold. "Alara." Kale's voice was low, almost a growl. "I knew you would come back to me. You always do." Jason stepped forward, placing himself between Kyle and Alara. "This ends tonight, Kale." Kyle's lips curled into a smile, but there was no warmth in it. "You don't understand, human. You think you can stop me? You're nothing but a pawn in this game. Alara was mine from the beginning, and now she'll return to me, or there will be consequences." Alara's eyes flashed with defiance. "You don't own me, Kale. You never did. And tonight, everyone will see the truth about you, about your plans." Jason's heart pounded as Kale stepped forward, his gaze still locked on Alara. "You think you can expose me? You think your little rebellion will make a difference? I have the power to crush you both." Alara stood tall, her voice unwavering. "You may have power, Kale, but it's built on lies and manipulation. The galaxy will know what you're really doing. Your empire will fall." Kale's expression darkened. "Then you will die with it." In that moment, Jason knew that the battle was inevitable. He didn't have any weapons, but he didn't need them. The only thing that mattered now was protecting Alara and ensuring that Kale didn't win. He rushed toward Kale, but the alien moved with lightning speed, slamming Jason against the wall. For a moment, everything blurred, but Jason's determination never wavered. He scrambled to his feet, knowing that he couldn't let Kale's power crush him. Not now. Not when Alara was so close to being free. Alara wasn't standing idly by. She moved quickly, using her agility, to dodge Kale's attacks and disarm him. The fight was fierce, but in the end, it wasn't just brute strength that mattered. It was the truth. The truth about Kale's tyranny, about his abuse of power. And it was that truth that Jason and Alara would expose to the galaxy. After what seemed like an eternity, Kale finally fell, his power broken, his empire crumbling. He was defeated, not just by Alara's strength, but by her determination, and the love she had found in Jason. With Kale's reign over, the galaxy would change, and Alara was no longer a pawn in his game. She was free. As the sun began to rise over the palace, Jason and Alara stood together, their hands clasped tightly. There was still much to be done. The road ahead would be difficult, but they had won. Together, They had taken down the most dangerous man in the galaxy. And as they walked into the dawn, Jason knew one thing for sure. No matter what the future held, they would face it side by side.